Ake Willow, Season 5, Chapter 9, Personal Space Invaders. This isn't how nostalgia is supposed to work. Usually, it should be a feeling of comfort and happiness brought on by memories of the past. Often, it's triggered by artifacts of a joyful time. I get nostalgic when I see an easy bake oven, which I think is the most common form of nostalgia for bakers. After all, who hasn't been marked by the oversweet, slightly burnt aroma of their first cake, even if it is cooked with an incandescent light bulb hidden inside a plastic fire hazard? There's also a specific recipe for coq au vin that pulls a smile from deep inside me. It's a meal I remember cooking with my buddies from school. I made the chicken, while Marie Anne put together a salad, and Moswen baked some babusa. What makes the memory so special is just how much wine we drank during the evening and how bad we all were at our given task. The babusa were good, but much too sweet, and I still can't fathom how Marie Anne managed to ruin a simple Greek salad. The coq au vin, however, was something special. Never did we figure out what went wrong, yet tasted so right. I meant to put together a very straightforward wine chicken, but ended up with a sweet and salty flavor instead. Not at all unpleasant to the palate, but a mystery in its making. Did I add maple syrup on a whim? Did I use cider instead of wine? Did one of my companions sneak in a tablespoon of sugar? The answer is lost to the mists of time and the fog of tipsy kitchen dancing. To this day, when I make coq au vin, I'm always tempted to sweeten the recipe to see if I can capture the magic again. One day, I'll do some experiments and figure it out, but until then, I'll savor the nostalgia for that one great evening shared between chefs-to-be. That's how nostalgia is meant to work. This afternoon, I'm instead faced with some strange abomination. Nostalgia for some of the worst times of my life. A wistful reminiscing for days when every waking minute was nothing but anxiety. I can't afford this, I repeat for the 5th time while unloading yet another bag of pet supplies on the living room floor. The best I can do is offer you a payment plan, Dr. River Pavlov explains. But I can't afford to cut prices any further. A litter box and a bag of recycled paper litter, a huge sack of veterinarian-quality dog food, a baby gate, along with an assortment of other pet toys and furniture clutter my apartment. My new veterinarian friend has been kind enough to help deliver it all and cut me a generous deal, but it still adds up. I don't want to dwell on the numbers, but between all of this and the amputation on Roberts, my savings are essentially wiped out, and then some. At least Dr. Pavlov had the grace and generosity to help raccoon-proof my apartment. You've already done more than enough, I explain, unpacking the baby gate. It's true. Not only did River handle every detail of Roberts' medical care, they did a lot of it out of pocket. They negotiated a bargain with the prosthetic specialist and spent hours caring for the raccoon during his recovery. Well, as long as Felix Duhamel never asks why he's being charged for Telazol for a calf delivery and assessment, we're in the clear. River delivers the line with such detached nonchalance that I fail to register the joke for a moment. If not for a wink at the end, I'd have thought they were serious. Might be better not to ask where all the bargains come from after all. I opt instead to get a few more technical clarifications. You really think this is going to keep a raccoon sequestered? I brandish the poorly assembled baby gate in River's direction. They pick it up in order to undo the damage my clumsy work has done. A 3-legged, morbidly obese, super drugged-out raccoon, the veterinarian specifies. But also a hyper-intelligent, century-old raccoon, I'm tempted to add. Besides, they continue, if he gets too adventurous, just put some sheets of aluminum foil at the top of the gate. He'll hate that. I've seen this trick used with cats. I wonder how raccoons react to it. Roberts and his friends swim through trash all day. How is a little foil going to keep him from climbing a fence? All right. River drops the gate on the couch before taking a long, critical look around my living room. Where do we confine the little bastard? The veterinarian is, of course, referring to the fat lump of fur plopped motionless in the dog carrier they brought along. Roberts isn't the fastest of the 6 Aquilo raccoons, but he's no stupider than the others. If he wanted, he'd have reached through the bars and undone the latch in seconds. As the laziest and plumpest of the gang, he prefers to nap through his current ordeal. Both Dr. Pavlov and I have earned his trust enough. We're not worth plotting against or escaping from. I've taken out everything fragile from my room and the office. I'd rather he stay out of the kitchen, living room, and washroom. I walk over to the corridor. I think if we place it here? River nods and brings the baby gate over, leaning it on the wall next to the living room. They then grab the cat bed and food bowls, walking straight to the front of the apartment, where my bedroom is. Good, they say. I recommend keeping his bed close to your bed, and he probably won't sleep too far from his food bowl for now. So, I try to catch up to River, to squeeze between them and the wall so I can get to the bedroom door first, before they can see it. It's no use. River walks with a hurried, assured pace, and the corridor is too narrow to accommodate 2 people and a large plush cat bed at once. They say, swinging the door open. Dr. Pavlov's eyes sweep the room, judging how good of a job I did cleaning out all the fragile and potentially edible, by raccoon standards, items. They have nothing to say at first, nodding with satisfaction at the empty surfaces and cleared-out nightstands. No phones, no loose wires, nothing a bored and restless convalescent raccoon might find interesting. You'll want to roll up the curtains when you're not home, otherwise he'll probably try to climb them. With his size, he'll bring the whole wall down. Simple enough, I think, but I know they're not done. Also, Dr. Pavlov continues, the bird has to go. The bird. River is referring to the covered cage that sits on the old oak dresser opposite the bed. The linen sheet hides the contents of the cage, lest the creature within babbles too loudly and makes a ruckus. I struggle to remain composed. Of course, I just kept it here so it wouldn't be bothered with all the moving. River crouches down next to the dressers, depositing the cat bed and taking great care to fluff it up into a comfortable lump. What kind of bird is it? Finch. Good job, Miriam. I'm sure that came out as naturally as it was sincere, all without a hint of panic. River looks up, food bowls in their hands and a little worry on their face. Finches love company, they explain. You should bring it up to the living room while we finish setting up. I should blink. Normal people who aren't actively lying and hiding things blink. All I can do is stand still like an idiot, wide-eyed and focusing on anything that'll avoid eye contact. It's my brother's bird, I stammer. I'd rather he take care of it. With a huff, River rises to their feet. On the ground, the perfect little nest for a recovering raccoon to enjoy. With very little effort, Roberts will be able to hobble or crawl from his bed to his food and water bowls. If he's ever well enough to rejoin his mischievous squad, he'll tell of a heavenly place where his whims were met and the kibble flowed like wine. While I give the corner a cursory inspection, Dr. Pavlov scrutinizes the birdcage further. First, with only their eyes, twisting their neck to see every angle. Then, they touch the linen, a hint of tactile curiosity that makes me a little nervous. Fine, the veterinarian finally says, holding up a bright blue disc next to their face. But if you're going to keep a raccoon in here, you're going to want to stop having snacks in the room. River twists the object between their fingers, showing a glossy purple jam sandwiched between perfectly smooth meringue pieces. A macaron. Not one baked by human hands, but rather conjured by a finch in a cage on a dresser. I don't know Dr. River Pavlov very well. They've been friendly, they've been helpful. They've gone out of their way to help a raccoon that in any other time and place would have been put down. I don't know how much of this town has found its way into the veterinarian's blood. As River takes a bite of the macaron, chewing and nodding in appreciation, I wonder how many secrets of this place have already revealed themselves to them while visiting the farms of Aquillow. It's fortunate that I live above where I work. While Aquillow seems to enjoy an unusual amount of good weather, not always sunny, but rarely of a catastrophic nature, when all hell breaks loose, it does so with a vengeance. I knew of the storm hours before it broke, lying in bed half awake, waiting for the next strange noise my new guest would make in his barbiturate slumber. Roberts has been, so far, an easy friend to accommodate. Already sedate while in good health, the damage to his leg and trauma of surgery have pacified him even further, giving him the demeanor of a lazy rock. A blade of grass sees more hours of activity in a day than does a convalescing Roberts the raccoon. That doesn't stop him from being a noisy roommate. Random growls and loud cooing interrupt the night at irregular intervals. The first of his guttural chatter sent me rushing out of bed, panicked at what could be happening to him. Is he choking on his own saliva? Gnawing on his bandage or prosthetic? Is he having a seizure? No. Roberts is simply snoring, belly pointed at the ceiling and tongue hanging out between his fangs. The scenario repeated 2 or 3 times, but by then it was too late. Roberts was quick to learn how easy I am to rise. In the span of an hour, he went from inadvertent snoring to intentional gurgles, all in order to get my attention for his amusement. The rolling storm, growling low on the horizon, was what put a stop to his antics. Roberts preferred to sleep, or pretend to, instead of facing the possibility of rain and lightning. I guess it makes sense. During storms, the raccoons probably huddle down in their dumpster palace to wait out the weather. I lay awake, bones trembling with every roar of thunder, and counting the seconds before the inevitable flashes of lightning. During a short pause of the raging winds, Roberts did allow for one more cooing growl. "I agree," I whispered to him. "It's gonna be a nasty one." And we were right. As I step out of the apartment, a frigid gust slashes at my face with vengeful anger. Cold and wet, the wind cuts at the skin, giving the impression of a sheet of ice sliding over my chin and cheeks. With care and haste, I take the metal steps down to street level. I thank my Montreal training, having gone down such treacherous stairs in the winter, preparing me for the slick and perilous journey of days like today. Yet, despite the raging storm and pouring spring rain that falls almost sideways, I smile. I probably shouldn't, not in the state my finances are right now. I've put so much on my credit card, I expect the little piece of plastic to bend under the weight. All for the benefit of an animal that's given me precious little aside from grief since I moved here. But weather of this intensity is precursor to a calm and empty day at the Aquillow Cafe. The tables will remain mostly unoccupied and the coffee machine will be kept quiet. 1 or 2 stragglers will seek refuge, and another couple of regulars will brave the typhoon for a drink and a pastry, but otherwise I'll have the whole day to catch up on things. I can clean to my heart's content, scrubbing the oven and changing the oil in the fryer. I can do inventory of my ingredients and prepare recipes to salvage food on the verge of going bad. I can cover the counter in recipe books, exploring new ideas and concocting, mad scientist style, my next experiment of culinary adventure. I can also pull out the old Dufour cooking grimoire and look for ways to keep the hellhound sated and calm. Though at times that project feels as desperate as trying to soothe the raging storm. Either way, I foresee a glorious day ahead. Except before my feet even leave the dangerous stairs, or my hand retrieves the keys to the cafe from my pocket, I know my plans are already ruined. Are you serious? Shivering, as wet as a drowned dog, Annabelle stands in front of the Aquilo. Arms wrapped around her elbows, she dances from one foot to the other, doing her best to hide underneath the awning above the door. The best answer she can muster is a silly grin from behind her soaked bangs. How long have you been here? My waterlogged friend shrugs and dances some more, shaking off as much water as she can. I don't know, maybe a few gallons? I measure time in gallons now. Miriam from a few days ago would have laughed. It's such a perfect Annabelle response. This morning's Miriam, though, she's worried. Her friend isn't doing well. While drenched to the very last fiber, her pants are still the same as the ones she wore 2 days ago. She also looks a little thinner and haggard. Go up, I say, interrupted by a low growl over the horizon. Go up, take a warm shower, and grab some dry clothes. Can I have your key? No, ring a few times if you need to wake Eric up. Oh, and when you go in my room, be careful with the raccoon. I'm happy to see her obey, though it's with a back hunched against the cold rain and a shiver that grips her whole body. Cool drops of water hit my scalp and go through my clothes like it should go through coffee grounds in a filter. The results are no less bracing, though far less pleasant. With a final sigh, I slip the keys into the Aquilo's lock and open up the door. I'm about to step in when I nearly trip on Annabelle's canvas bag. The bag lets out a wet plop when I drop it on the counter. Only the bottom looks wet, having sat in a shallow puddle while Annabelle waited. She worked hard to keep it out of the rain, harder than she did for herself. I hope you don't keep school books in there, I whine to myself and immediately start going through my friend's belongings. It's not what you think. I know how much textbooks cost, and I'd hate for her to have important notes run with ink and become illegible. All I want to do is save what I can, but by the time Annabelle comes back down, the weather has ebbed and flowed, but the storm rages on. I've taken out the full inventory of her bag, carefully pressing wet pages between paper towels and putting weights on drying books so the pages won't wrinkle. The damage is minimal, but I've done my very best to minimize it nonetheless. All the things a good friend would do. There was no saving a few pens who got so wet they might have leaked ink. Cheap pens Annabelle can easily replace for a few dollars. Thankfully, there were no electronics aside from a pair of earphones tucked into a pocket that somehow remained dry as a cracker. However, papers and schoolbooks were not the only thing I found in Annabelle's bag. Oh boy, my friend says, walking back into the Aquilo, avoiding the still falling rain. Your brother is not comfortable around girls, is he? Moment I walked out of the bathroom, I thought he was going to crawl between the couch cushions. I'm not laughing. My brain tries to go to the image of a blushing Eric, stammering as he tries to avert his gaze, but the picture will not paint itself. What? Annabelle stops, picking up on my baleful mood. I had a towel wrapped around me. I didn't flash the guy. She's wearing some of my clothes, instead of her usual cargo pants or torn jeans and graphic tank tops. Her short, blonde hair looks unkempt without any product to give it shape, and her face has exchanged the colors of her makeup for that of a warm blush. My jeans and white t-shirt, 2 sizes too big, hang on her like a scarecrow. She looks small and fragile, despite her renewed energy. What? Your stuff got wet. I step back from the counter so she can see. I tried to save most of it. Annabelle doesn't even care to look at my handiwork. Instead, she frowns and steps closer to the register, but away from her books and notes, as if she is trying to get an angle on me. No, she mutters, like a chemist who just discovered the wrong compounds in her experiment. This isn't about my stuff being wet. Or Eric. What's wrong? I put my hand flat on the counter between us, sliding it palm down between the register and tip jar. I found these. My hand lifts, revealing underneath a small plastic bag, worn with age but still perfectly sealed. Inside, gleaming under the halogen lights of the Aquilo, 2 golden cufflinks in the shape of crosses. Careful, as if expecting I would snatch them away, Annabelle reaches out to take the cufflinks. She holds the bag up to her eyes, pressing her fingers to each cross, literally counting them to make sure both are still there. "What are those?" I ask, less curious about their nature than I am their origin. "Nothing," she answers, barely above a whisper. My hand hits the counter, perhaps faster than intended and definitely harder, but there's a cold presence in my spine as I watch my friend holding these cufflinks with such naked reverence. "They're not nothing, Annabelle." She doesn't jump, nor does she even shy away. I'm barely a presence to her at this point, the cufflinks holding her attention with a far firmer grip. "They are," she says, almost detached. "I almost forgot they were in there." "Those are Inquisitor cufflinks, Annabelle," I say, trying hard to match her composure. "It's what people who want to kill me, or at least ruin me, wear. How did you get those?" She twists the bag between her fingers again, an entomologist studying a particularly strange specimen. "I stole them from Mom." The rest of the morning is awkward. Before I can further grill Annabelle about the cufflinks, a few of my more courageous regulars brave the storm to get their coffee. Ian, the leader of the Pilvist cult, arrives first. His pristine white robes are wet, but not as drenched as one would assume after suffering the gale winds and diluvian rains. No umbrella or raincoat. The fanciful might say that faith kept him dry, but even I would be more tempted to say Ian took advantage of a lull in the storm. Michael, then Detective Lamore, and finally a precious few more take up residence in the dining room, all intent on riding out the rains in the warmth of my coffee shop. It's slow for business, and I'll likely end the day with more surplus food than I prefer, but there's little to be done about it. Some can be sold tomorrow. The rest I'll see about donating. "What you thinking?" Annabelle asks. She's been packing books and notes back into her bag, carefully sorting each and peeling paper towels from between pages. The cufflinks, still in their tattered plastic bag, taunt me from the counter this whole time. I don't know why Annabelle won't just put them away. Her mouth is shut on the subject for now, yet she refuses to hide them. Once or twice she'll pick them up and look at them, expressionless the whole time. She squints, looking close, but never once pulling the little golden crosses from their bag, as if they were of a radioactive or caustic material, only safe to observe while contained. There hasn't been a new customer in almost an hour at this point, and what would be the lunch rush is perhaps half an hour away. I'm hoping that the rains will hold their fury long enough for a few locals to come calling, demanding sandwiches and muffins and cookies. The weather begs that hot drinks be consumed. Is it so much to ask the local businesses to send their most courageous warriors on a coffee run? I'm thinking of giving Stefan the afternoon off and taking his shift. Finance or boredom? Annabelle is holding her mixology book, flipping through the pages, studying the multitude of bookmarks and sticky notes, judging which need replacing. 6 of one, half dozen the other. I lean on the frame separating the kitchen and the dining room, glancing longingly at the oven. I should be trying new recipes today and testing them out on volunteers. What's stopping you? I could eat. Whether a hint or not, I push myself off the frame and cross over to the kitchen, grabbing a couple of chicken and cranberry wraps from the fridge. One of them flies from my hand, rolling through the air to land between Annabelle's hungry fingers. I've never been good at sports, especially the throwing kinds, but I could feel proud of that one, if only because it didn't end up crashing on the dining room floor. You, I say, peeling the wax paper from my own sandwich, revealing the homemade tortilla and rich marinated chicken smell. The enormous raccoon upstairs who's probably gnawing through an antique chair, that thing in the forest, the Inquisitor and the cardigan witch threatening me, but right this second, it's mostly you. No one was looking for a way to plug Annabelle's bottomless stomach. Nothing makes me happier than feeding my friends, especially when they're in need of it. either to fill an empty stomach or an empty soul. It's what I do best, some would say. Seeing her put down the chicken wrap isn't what I had in mind. It's certainly a stronger blow than I expected. No one puts down my food unless something is very wrong with them.
Yeah,
She says, closing her mixology textbook.
I haven't been easy, have I?
Wrong. You've been nothing but easy. You act like I'm either too stupid or too blind to notice, but something's up with you. Her lips part, a protest surely lodged between her teeth and ready to be spoken, but I'm just setting the table. I see you enduring with a smile. Just a little pain between each joke, but I see you. She relents, picking up the wrap and undressing it, though not with her usual eager and famished fingers.
You've already got a full drink,
she says.
My issues would make it overflow.
Holding my meal between my teeth, I pull myself up to sit on the counter. It's where I like to park my ass when the cafe is empty and I want to think. The dining room isn't full, but there are a few customers lingering about and ignoring us, but that makes it easy to ignore them back. So, where have you been staying? Annabelle looks up, chewing through a smile. She won't have the bandwidth to compliment the chicken wrap, but I'm sure her polishing it off will be validation enough.
Jordan's place.
I know Jordan, though I know him better as coffee with 3 sugars, no cream, and a cheese croissant if there's any left. Your mom knows?
Waiting for her to notice.
I'd offer her a place to stay if it weren't for Eric having claimed my couch already. Hell, if she didn't have a place to crash, I would have figured out something regardless. Runaways are nothing new. Half my peers in Montreal shared apartments less out of necessity than to escape their parents. Or out of the necessity to escape their parents, I suppose. We all knew someone who couch surfed through their CJEP years. The very concept having a romantic aroma to it, but when one would take a bite, the flavor seemed bitter. What happened, I wonder, but I can't put the question to sound. It could be any number of things. I've seen firsthand Mère Lagacé when standing on the cliff's edge of her patience. I know her to be a formidable fighter and a woman under tremendous amounts of pressure. Is this the product of neglect or abuse? Whatever the case, it's difficult to imagine someone like Annabelle choosing to run from a problem rather than taking it head on. I want nothing more than to solve this for her. I will solve this for her. But like any meal, it's best to read through the whole recipe, gather the ingredients, and clean the kitchen before putting anything in the oven. We eat in silence, interrupted only once by the door chimes as Detective Lamore leaves, braving the streets. I don't know if he's worried more about the weather or whatever case he's investigating, but he barely nods on his way out. You know, I start, balling up the empty wax paper in one hand. Gulliver hardly speaks to me anymore.
I've noticed,
Annabelle says, eyeing the full bakery display.
I seriously thought you guys were an item when I first met you.
I laugh. Considering our history, that's an interesting assumption. We've had a fraught relationship, but we're just friends. At least, we were. I hop down from the counter and I grab a pastry from the display. Not just any pastry. I have a half-dozen cherry jam trottoirs. The little flaky treats are popular because of how much sugar and flavor they pack, but these are a little peculiar. I've ground just a hint of lavender in them to soothe anxiety. I found having a few things designed to calm nerves on hand is a good idea, especially close to finals for the local students. I put one on a plate that I slide in front of Annabelle. It's not just him, though, I add, pondering if maybe I should treat myself to something sweet. Olivia hardly drops by either.
Which explains the drought of apple fritters and apple pies of late.
Annabelle's observation is spoken through crumbs and blobs of jam. I confirm, mimicking Olivia Figg's particular tone.
What happened?
Leaning on the counter, I lower myself so my head is framed by my shoulders. Absent-minded, I pluck off a piece of trottoir for myself. Whether I'm feeding my sweet tooth or aiming to quell an altogether different issue, I don't venture to guess. They stopped trusting me for some reason. I'm not going to pretend that Gulliver's relationship with Ophelia doesn't sting. It's not exactly a betrayal, but also it kind of feels like it is. But it's how he didn't even talk to me about it, and how he's pulled back since. I steal another bite. Annabelle rewards me with a disapproving look. It's free food, but once given, she's become greedy for it.
And Olivia?
Annabelle picks up the rest of the trottoir, making sure I can't nab another nibble before she's done. Olivia. I trail off. How much do I tell her? Olivia was Doris's friend, and I've always suspected that she knew far more than she let on. She knows of demons, and she understands Dufour magic, despite never having practiced any of it herself. In many ways, my first friend in Aquilo is a force to be reckoned with herself. Savvy businesswoman, an entrepreneur, and wife that commands respect and admiration. Brutally honest, but a clever listener, she's what I would call a pillar of town. Part of me wants to dismiss Olivia from Annabelle's view, minimize what it is that I suspect of my friend. But isn't that the whole point of why I'm bringing up Gulliver and Olivia? To show Annabelle the damage that keeping things from your friends can cause. So, here goes. I think Olivia is trying to grow an Aquilo tree. I've never spoken the suspicion out loud. Somehow, I almost expect the owner of Fig's Orchard to burst through the front door as if summoned. Gales of wind laden with rain and thunderous lightning cracking the sky upon her arrival. There's nothing. In fact, even Annabelle remains silent, the last bite of her trottoir hanging but an inch from her lips, teetering at the tip of her fingers, her whole face paralyzed. Unblinking, she watches to see if I'm about to say, "Gotcha," or some other punchline.
There's no such thing as an Aquilo tree,
she finally says, echoing the oft-repeated line. I know, I mumble, finding my suspicions ridiculous again, buying the story of the impossible tree anew. Yet, I know, but what would it mean if there was? Aquilo is written by J.F. Dubow and narrated and produced by me, Amy Frost. If you enjoyed this podcast and would like to hear more, please rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast platform. Want to support the show? Buy us a coffee. Go to ko-fi.com/Aquilo to donate. Aquilo has a Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Aquilo for details. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram under the username Aquilo.